Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning and welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
And thank you for joining us this Monday morning.
Yes. Good morning, Marlene.
How are you?
I'm doing fine, shaking off the weekend as we talked about earlier.
I know. Yeah, Monday mornings, we all tend to be a bit sluggish. I got to say, the weather is cooperating. It's not rainy, so you don't want to stay in bed longer. It's time to get the week started. The final week in October.
Wow, would you imagine that? Which means we have just about 9 more weeks before Christmas.
I saw that. Someone said, what, 9 more Fridays or 9 more Sundays till Christmas? And I was like, no, that's not right.
I
usually have a rule, and I say I don't talk about Christmas until after November 19th. But I got to say, this year around, because we need some cheer and some happiness and just something to look forward to. I'm definitely on a Christmas countdown this year.
And we don't know what November 19th will bring anyway.
Well, I could tell you it'll bring hodot for me, that much. Hopefully some sahau.
I don't usually wait until the 19th to have hodot.
Yes, but then you do have it even on that day to fully enjoy it.
I remember one person, I've heard complaints about the unavailability of hodot in Dangriga on the 19th. That's a big controversy, and it continues to be. You can't find hodot in Dangriga on the 19th. Maybe that could be fixed this year.
Okay, yeah. Double the pot.
Double the pot.
But that's ahead in November. We also have Halloween coming up this weekend.
Right.
So tough for the kids. They won't be able to go about and dress up for school and do trick-or-treating. But I do hope that parents are able to do something small with them. They do need little things to look forward to and have some fun.
I know where one school is working to pack their own Halloween candy bags and give it out to their students. I think it's this Friday they're doing that, and so the students will come in and get their little Halloween bags, just to not feel left out,
I know, God bless teachers. You see, they still they think of stuff like that because they know their children. But as we said, the final week in October, it's also a critical time for us to take stock on where we are with the pandemic and recognizing that we have been informed of outlined targets that have a direct effect on our movements in the final portion of the year. So at the end of this month, provided that we hit a 10% positivity rate when it comes to COVID, then we should see the curfew hour pushed back. I know you've been looking forward to that. The curfew hour pushed back just 1 more hour, and if by the end of November we get it down to 5%, then we get 11 during the week and Cinderella curfew on weekends. So
I can't remember those days, this is like so far away, remembering those days. But I was looking at the numbers, and perhaps it's something we could discuss a bit more later on, but I was looking at the numbers, and we have 1 more week to get to that 10% positivity rate, and currently we're at 12%. So
it's been slowly declining.
It has.
I'm always cautious about it. I think that we don't want to see it go down and think, oh, okay, free for all. Let's call all the friends over and hang out. And we just know how much risk there is when it comes to COVID-19, and we must always remember that we have to be careful.
Indeed.
Yes, but of course we have a lot that's taken place over the weekend as well. So we're going to get into some motivation to get the day started. Our eye-opener for this morning, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Over time, we have learned to suppress some of the most fun aspects of our individuality. Most of us express our distinctiveness in many ways throughout our lives. Although, as we proudly share our offbeat traits and preferences with the world, we take great pains to downplay those eccentricities we ourselves deem odd. Instead of living lives colored by these quirky impulses, we seek out socially acceptable outlets for our peculiarities. We may not realize that we are editing ourselves in this way because our individual societal awareness is unintentionally attuned to the attitudes of the people we encounter each day. Over time, we have learned to suppress some of the most fun aspects of individuality. To rediscover and embrace these buried traits, we need only ask ourselves what we would do if we knew for certain that no one would judge our choices. When you shake your tail feathers like no one's watching, you'll discover that there are many others who appreciate you because you're willing to let go of any inhibition. By doing this, you help others know it is okay. No one else in the world is precisely like you. And each time you revel in this simple fact, you rededicate yourself to the celebration of individuality.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I love this motivation. I'm particularly motivated this morning to go out and do something
Shake your tail feather?
that I've never done, that I haven't done in a while.
Hey, we could get some music on in just about 30 seconds and you could get that done.
Not on a Monday morning.
Why
already.
not? Have you
on
ever
a
found that
Monday
dancing kind of
morning.
changes your mood?
It does.
Yeah.
Singing as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, we can be so.
See, you chose singing because I know secretly that you're a decent singer, so you're trying to divert.
All right. So on this beautiful Monday morning, and perhaps that's one of the things, you know, that the eye opener speaks to.
Yeah.
Some of the talents and the giftings we may have that we suppress because we're afraid of being critiqued.
You're absolutely right. The part that stood out to me the most was really looking at how we have shifted the things that we know we do to celebrate, the things that bring us joy,
Yeah.
to what is considered socially acceptable. So as we
Yeah.
become adults, what is that? Socializing with friends, which means having drinks, perhaps having some dancing. There seems to be less dancing at parties, too, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And so I think that we shift to those, like those are the only outlets for fun. And if you go back to our childhood days, we used to find fun in everything.
In everything. Climbing a tree was the most fun thing to do.
Stars to remember that.
Same, riding a bike down a hill.
So that's why when I thought of it, one of the things that I do enjoy doing, because I have little ones in my family, my nieces, some of the most fun I can have is when I'm entertaining them, because then
Yeah.
you can just let loose and act like a kid because it's socially acceptable.
Yeah.
So if it's going out and playing in a rainstorm, which I actually love doing, we can do that. I don't know what people think when they drive by and see this crazy
I get the
woman.
hint that you may be having a bit more fun than them when you're doing that.
so.
And it's more for you and not for them?
All about them. But those are the kind of things I think that
Yeah.
sometimes we've learned to just believe we can't do anymore. And what it says in being able to give people that openness to see that it's okay.
Yeah. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah. All right. So that's your challenge for this morning. Of course, find a way to tap into that fun side of yourself. And don't worry what anybody's thinking, because you're having fun. All right. And we'll get Paul to shake his tail feather by the end. All right. We got Crystal Rosales on the line to tell us about our weather. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today, Crystal?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Crystal. So it looks like the start of a lovely day. Please tell us, what can we expect?
Well, mainly fair conditions will prevail over the country.
The rains have ended?
For now, yes. Over the next few days, it's going to be mostly sunny with just isolated showers or thunderstorms developing.
Okay, that's good to know. And what about the winds?
Winds will be from the east to southeast at 5 to 15 knots.
All right. And the sea state?
It's going to be light chop.
Okay, so safe for people to head out to sea.
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about the temperatures.
Right. The highs for today will be 88 along the coast, 94 inland, and 80 in the mountains.
And the lows?
For tonight will be 79 along the coast, 74 inland, and 68 in the mountains.
Okay. And the extended forecast?
For the next few days, it's mainly clear conditions, just isolated showers or thunderstorms until the end of the week when we expect some rain to start.
All right. So we must make use of the sun for this week. Now let's talk about the tropics. We're just about 5 weeks away from the end of the hurricane season. Is there anything out there that we have to keep an eye on?
For right now, no, it's pretty quiet.
Well, that's great news. Thank you so much for the update, Crystal.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
And you guys as well.
All right. Sun is back.
Sun is back just like that after a week of rains. Now we get a week of the sun. So that's the tropical weather for you, you know.
And people are just thinking I can catch up on my laundry.
Right, that's how people are thinking.
All right, so that's your weather update for today. We are expecting mostly sunny skies, just a little bit of clouds, but thankfully you shouldn't be seeing any rainfall like we did last week.
Yeah.
All right, and with your motivation and weather out of the way, it's time for us to take a look at the big stories coming out from last week and what lies ahead in the news. So we're going to shift gears into Eye on the News.
All right, so Marlene, this morning we want to start with one report that came out on Friday of an incident with some immigration officers at the airport, at the international airport at the PGIA. There were reports that, initial reports were that immigration officers were detained by police. However, after some clarification, we learned that that was in fact not the case. We later learned that at least 7 persons were detained, comprising of Colombians and Dominicans, and they arrived in the country on Friday. And reports are that they were barred from entering the country due to suspicions of them being involved in a trafficking ring. And so they were barred from entering into the country, and they were ordered to immediately return to their country. So those reports were initial on Friday. We were receiving information in the newsroom, and over the weekend we were able to confirm that in fact it was not immigration officers that were detained, but that it were 7 foreigners who were sent back home to their country. And so that's one of the things that we understand the immigration department will be releasing some further details on throughout the course of this week, either today or tomorrow, and so we will be looking out for that.
Yeah, I think it was, the rumors were circulating for a while, and I do want to say, we're grateful that official information was provided so timely so that things couldn't spread like wildfire, because I know the first report had things about extortion and a number of other activities that we couldn't confirm. And then when the official information was released by the Ministry of Immigration on a Saturday to help bring some clarity to the situation before it spiraled out of control.
Yes, and so yeah, you're right. The initial rumors were that 2 immigration officers were detained for some sort of extortion, and they put that aside, cleared that right away to let us know that that is not the case. So looking into other news, we had some more heavier stuff happening over the weekend, beginning with an accident, a fatal traffic accident that occurred on Saturday. Now we know that on Saturday we had heavy rains across the country, and so we have 30-year-old Darnell Suazo, 30-year-old Darnell Suazo was traveling from the peninsula, Placentia Peninsula, on his way to Dangriga, when he lost control of the vehicle he was in, which caused a traffic accident, which led to the loss of life, his life. And so another man was in the vehicle in the passenger side, and he was injured, admitted to the hospital in a stable condition. And that's obviously on the southern highway. That's where that occurred while he was on his way to Dangriga from the Placencia Peninsula. And then taking us up north now, a policeman was stabbed in the north. He goes by the name of Police Constable Ronnie Cobb. Initial reports are that Cobb was socializing after coming off duty, and this was sometime before curfew. So that's one of the things I believe police will investigate in terms of, all right, so he came off duty, but why is it that he was socializing, or how is it that he was socializing after curfew? This is sometime before 12, notwithstanding an altercation occurred where Cobb was stabbed. However, reports at this time suggest that he was treated inside the hospital, and now that he's now at home recovering. However, like I mentioned, and while that's good, well, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps the story here, one of the angles here is, why is it that this police officer was out socializing at a time when he, like any other Belizean, should have been adhering to the curfew regulations? And so,
no, key point. There are definitely exceptions made for essential workers to be out beyond curfew hours, but the regulations are absolutely clear. It is whether you're traveling to or from work, or you're out executing official duties on behalf of your workplace.
right, and I would imagine that I could highly suspect that there was some alcohol involved in this socializing, because whilst we know how these things factor into these types of incidents, and so that's another thing that could be looked into, if whether or not they had alcohol from earlier, if it was being sold to them at some location as well, and I think perhaps that's another umbrella issue that can be addressed: the sale of alcohol after 6. Perhaps there's some sort of undercover investigation that needs to be had, because
Have you heard reports of people selling alcohol after 6?
I've heard reports of people selling alcohol after 6, stores, on the hand, trying to.
I have no doubt.
Yes, so it happens. It happens because the 6 p.m. Cut on alcohol sales. I would imagine it cuts into the margins of some of these smaller stores that stock their shelves with alcohol to cater to that community. There are some communities perhaps that buys more alcohol from their stores than anything else, and so it cuts into the margins when you have to cut at 6, and so I think that's why we see that.
I think time and time again we've seen where enforcement is a challenge, and I mean, there are only so many human bodies that are available to be able to check whether it's stores or households where people are socializing or purchasing alcohol. It does remind me, though, that Minister Shabbat had told us last week that they are going to be rolling out a special enforcement agency that's supposed to recruit people so that they can have individuals within smaller communities. If you imagine, if you live in a space where the nearest police booth is, a village away or in the main town, it's not practical that they'll be able to spot check every store. And there's an expectation that businesses would adhere, because this is a matter of public health.
Indeed, and so that's just one of the things we'll definitely be looking at closely, how this enforcement team enforces these regulations, because there's so much to enforce. And then yesterday in Belize City, we received reports of a shooting. A man identified as Robert Lamb was shot several times to the body on Peter Street. And so again, it raises an alarm when we see these types of incidents occurring in the old capital, just because we know how these incidents could turn from just a simple shooting to retaliations, leading upon retaliations. And so we're hoping that the police with thorough investigation to get to the bottom of this and prevent any further retaliation. Now, those are on the crimes, accident, heavy side of things. One of the other things that we've been looking at is in terms of the trade license fee amendments that one of the ministries is proposing. I think it's the Ministry of Rural Development is proposing some amendments to the trade license fees. We saw that come out in a cabinet. Came out in a cabinet brief about 2 weeks ago, where they are proposing one that for the first time, businesses in rural communities would now be required, mandated to pay trade license fees. And one of the reasoning logic behind it is that these fees would go directly to the village councils in order for them to, develop much needed funds for development in their community. We spoke to the CEO in the Ministry of Rural Development, who kind of gave us an explanation just to say that these bodies, these village councils, they were set up, they were established without any real funds, without any real means of getting funds to do the kind of work that they want to do in their community. And it was, I was not aware that these villages, that the businesses within these villages didn't in fact pay trade license. That was news to me. When you look at a village like Ladyville,
well, I was going to say, when you put it into perspective with the size of some of the villages, Ladyville being an example in the south of Bay Vista, some of these villages are bigger, as big as some of the towns that we have. The populations have been growing, and we've seen time and time again where legislation is created at a time where the makeup of the country, where the concentration of people live, the size of villages, and even the resources that are available to them, they've outgrown it. And so this is one of the initiatives, it seems, to be able to try to assist village councils in offering their residents something, being able to assist them when it's necessary. I
know one of the pushbacks, one of the criticisms at this time has to do with the smaller businesses, your corner side, Chips and Ideal shop, where the little kids go for candy. Wondering if if these types of regulations will be imposed on those small businesses. And then speaking with the CEO of the ministry, he kind of clarified that question, just making it known that that's not necessarily their target. They're looking at it based on production. What is it that you're producing? The quantity of your production as a business, and so that was one of the things he clarified. He also made the point that these funds would be going directly to the councils, and you won't necessarily have a middleman per se. I'm not sure fully how it will work out, the extent of it, because there's still a lot to be talked about and discussed with that. Now, finally, going into this week, as we were speaking about earlier, is we'll be monitoring the positivity rate when it comes to COVID-19, because that will say a lot in terms of what our regulations will look like coming into November. I know across the nation we're holding our breaths, hoping that 12.7% positivity rate, that goes down a notch, at least to 10% by the end of this week, going into the first week of November, because what we're looking at, if that becomes the case, is a 10 p.m. curfew, which gives us a bit more time to make our way homes, and so we don't have to rush.
No, I think having an added incentive for people to be more mindful about the spread of COVID-19 and also to get vaccinated so they can minimize the spread is definitely helpful. And another one that has been outlined, I know, by the Prime Minister, is that potentially by the end of the year, if we get the positivity rate down to below 5 or below, then we would possibly have the reopening of the land border, but only for vaccinated persons. So that's also something I know people have been asking about repeatedly. But For me, I think that the key point here is we can't just wait for the chart to come out and look for numbers to fall. There's a disconnect between realizing our personal responsibility that we have. And every time we move around and every time we interact with people, we need to be conscious that we want to get those numbers down and take every precaution necessary that we're not contributing to the spread.
How often we disconnect ourselves from the numbers when we in fact are the numbers. Like what they're reporting on is us. There's like our behavior, you know. So to disconnect ourselves from the numbers, I mean, it's to be lost or remiss of the fact that the numbers are us. We are the numbers.
Yeah. And I always say that, especially when we look at the fatality count. I think people, you know, throw around 300, 400. That's 400 families, you know, that have lost a loved one in such a difficult, abnormal circumstance, you know. And I think that that's something that we must always remind ourselves of. Look at, this is the cumulative death toll, and we keep on seeing where the majority of deaths are in unvaccinated persons. Now, people who are vaccinated can potentially get COVID-19, get hospitalized, and even lose their lives in this case. But do remember that these cases, we've heard from the Ministry of Health with their breakdown of the data, that the breakthrough cases that lead to hospitalizations and deaths are for persons who have pre-existing conditions or special vulnerabilities. So you're talking about people with diabetes, you're talking about people with hypertension, you're talking about people with cancer, people who have conditions that have already suppress their immune system, elderly persons. All of these persons are still very much vulnerable to the effects of COVID-19, but the vaccination is an added layer of protection to help keep them from getting it and help them to survive. So, you know, we got to keep it all in context and just remember that we need to get vaccinated and we have to keep on maintaining these protocols.
And what's encouraging is that there isn't a shortage of vaccines in the country, as the Prime Minister has said time and time again, as well as some of his other cabinet members, is that we have enough vaccines to vaccinate the entire population that is qualified to get vaccinated. And so that's encouraging to note that you can get vaccinated if that is, in fact, your choice.
All right.
Yeah, so with that, these are the stories that we have to highlight this morning, and these are the stories that we will be looking at today, some of them looking at today, to bring you full coverage in our 6 p.m. newscast, and of course others that we will be keeping a close eye on throughout the rest of the week.
All right, and with the eye on the news out of the way, it's time for us to get our conversation started for today. We have a very interesting show lined up. We're starting off with?
We are starting off with new legislation to be introduced to strengthen juvenile justice. So we'll be having a discussion with the Minister of Human Development, Minister Dolores Balderramas Garcia, and like as I mentioned, we'll be talking about new legislation to be introduced to strengthen juvenile justice. We'll also be having in that discussion Starla Bradley, who is the Director of Human Development, Families, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs.
All right, and the second part of the show, this is interesting. So we have two Belizeans who are going to be joining us. They've done a research on the influence of media portrayal on the Belizean identity formation. What does that mean? When we see references of Belize in international media, how does it affect us, or how are we actually portrayed out in the global community? So we're going to hear from them just what they've found so far, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation to take a look at how we're portrayed. So that's our second conversation for today. We're going to go ahead and take a break. But before we do, we got a birthday shout out.
Yeah, we want to say happy birthday, send birthday greetings to Tyrone Palmerson. Tyrone Palmerson, my brother, from all of us here at Open Your Eyes Studios and Channel 5. We want to say happy birthday to you, and we hope that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful Monday, and a wonderful week.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we are going to be learning more about the new legislative changes to the juvenile justice system. So please stay tuned.
Bundle the fastest, most reliable, unlimited broadband in Belize with your prepaid or postpaid mobile plan or Netflix. You can bundle your broadband with your prepaid and enjoy 50% off all national calls, plus get SMS and data. Paid plans? Then bundle with any speed and pay only $25 extra monthly to enjoy unlimited smart-to-smart calls, plus 500 minutes, plus 6,300 megabytes of data. Stream unlimited HD movies and TV shows with our broadband, plus the Netflix add-on for only $30 monthly, and enjoy streaming on your laptop, TV, phone, or tablet. Visit a smart showroom near you to sign up or upgrade to the bundle that's right for you. Smart, bringing people together.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
I was officially tasked by my work to attend the first barbershop training, and I found out that it's a really refreshing thought. It helps a lot. It gives you a fresh look at life. It gives people a chance to develop. It gives people a chance to grow. It gives people a chance to be themselves, and it helps them to grow as a person. For me, what I took the most from this session was the fact that sometimes we try to give rules and regulation to our kids growing up, like boys shouldn't cry. Certain things are just for girls, certain jobs are just for boys, and we kind of hold back young persons from reaching to their full potential.
It's key for me to understand that gender-based biases are real. It's something that I will take and convert into my knowledge and make sure that I push out when it comes to offering these services here at the Department of Youth Services.
I'll be committing to working with my kids, working with my friends, working with the young persons that I come in contact with to put an end to domestic violence, gender-based violence, and violence against young people on a whole.
This can be you. Get vaccinated. The life you save can be yours. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
With the touch of a finger, we can easily unlock our phones and securely gain access to our data. This technology is called biometrics, and the Social Security Board is introducing fingerprint recognition to make transactions and handling of your sensitive data secure, fast, accurate, and convenient. Is your identity safe? Fingerprint recognition will keep your Social Security record secure and confidential while making your access fast and easy. It protects your identity. Is your name a common one? Fingerprint recognition uses your unique characteristics, ensuring your hard-earned benefits go directly to you, the rightful owner. Tired of all the paperwork? Fingerprinting makes this hassle-free. Your convenience and your information security is our priority. Fingerprint recognition coming soon. Social Security at your fingertips.
And we're back.
All right, so we're back. And as we promised you, we have the minister with us, the Minister Dolores Balderamas Garcia, who is in the Ministry of Human Development. Minister, good morning, and it's good to have you this morning.
Good morning to you young people. Good to see you.
Not as young and vibrant as you are, as you seem this morning. So thank you for being here. As we said earlier, we have you on set to discuss with us some changes in legislation that has to do with juvenile justice. We know this is a...
We also have Starla.
Oh, right. Sorry, the technology, the Zoom. And so we also have Starla Bradley with us. Earlier, I introduced her as the Director of Human Development. However, I want to make a correction that she's actually the Director of the Community Rehabilitation Department. Starla, of course, I'm not forgetting you. Good morning, Ms. Starla Bradley.
Good morning, Marlene and Paul. Good morning, Minister Dolores.
Good morning.
Good morning, Belize.
Good morning. All right, so Minister, this is obviously a very important conversation. So let's start off with perhaps giving us just a general overview of some of these changes that we can expect.
Surely, well, thank you very much, and we do think it's important. But perhaps I should start with an acknowledgement of all the people who have helped and who have worked to bring us to this point. Because at our National Commission for Families and Children, we have had people working on this for years. We have had input from the Attorney General's Ministry. We have had input from partners. We have had input, of course, from our Executive Director, Ms. Margaret Nicholas. And it's brought us to this point where we felt, Starla in particular, felt that it's time for us to move to make the change. And it really is a big paradigm shift. So we're proud to have come to this moment. The House meeting won't be this morning, it'll be tomorrow. But what has brought us to this point, Paul and Marlene, is that it is really high time for us to move to a different approach to our children in need of care and who are exhibiting vulnerabilities, rather than saying they have uncontrollable behavior and say, and the parents say, well, I can't handle it, so send in a hostel, send in a mile 21. You almost sound like you send somebody back a Baptist. Because, well, you know what was back a Baptist, not true? I'm back,
No.
you see, Paul is young. Back a Baptist, I mean, the old jail, the Belize City, man,
Oh,
jail
really?
lane.
Okay.
We still have a jail lane, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, well, so almost like sending a child back a Baptist. So we said, no, that is not the approach. Vulnerabilities that exhibit themselves in what used to be called uncontrollable behavior need attention. And we felt that it's really the time to come forward with the legislation to repeal the Certified Institutions Act and replace it with the approach that comes and the whole shift that comes with a residential care facility. So we're in that process now, and it is now a matter of changing the legislation. And there are two consequential pieces of legislation that go with this, and that is the amendment to the Juvenile Offenders Act and the amendment to the Families and Children's Act, which will actually change the name in those bits of legislation from certified institution, because that'll be gone, and moving it now to residential care facility. I have to tell you, the Certified Institutions Act is old, something like 90 years old.
Wow.
So it's time. It's time that we make that change, you know. And maybe Starla would like to add.
Yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead, Starla.
Like Minister was saying, our laws date back to the 1930s. The Juvenile Offenders Act dates back to 1936, and the Certified Institutions Act, which governs the youth hostel itself, dates back to 1939. What we're doing essentially, and which is of great importance, is that we're removing status offenses. Status offenses are offenses that only children are charged with. Adults can't be charged with a status offense. And really, status offenses are red flags. They're really protection issues, parenting issues. They're red flags that indicate that something is wrong. But what our system has been doing is we've been penalizing the child. If you look at the Juvenile Offenders Act, Section 14, it has a child can be charged for begging, or for not having a parent or guardian, or for wandering, or for residing in a house with a prostitute. You can see how antiquated these laws are, right? So we're really moving to remove these completely and implement a more rights-based approach to engaging with children and their parents.
Now, this is a challenging time to be having this conversation, because if we put it into where we are today, there is a clamor from the society to be able to address the crime situation in the country. And we have seen where children have been recruited to gangs, and in fact now are perpetrators of whether it's attempted murder or murder. And the question is, how do we ensure that those who do commit offenses like this will face consequences, versus some of the things that you're speaking of, whether it's wandering or begging?
Yes. Maybe I could start by saying, and I'm sure Starla will back it up, maybe I could start by saying that the majority of the children in care are there for vulnerabilities that have nothing to do with criminal behavior. Of course, there's the Wagner's facility at the prison, which is for the serious offenders who are underage. Now, the age of criminal responsibility in Belize is 12. And we're kind of high middle, if you could put it that way. In some parts of the Caribbean, it's as low as 7. And in some parts of Latin America, it can go up to 14 and 16. So we're kind of in the middle. And I guess for now, we can be happy that we're not too very low. But I do want to stress that the minority of kids at the hostel are there for minor offenses like stealing or something like that. So we are looking, yes, at the society and keeping everybody safe and as crime-free as possible, even though we can see it's going up. But we want to take an approach of helping children and families. We have the name families in the ministry right now, and we really wish to help children and families to do that level of rehabilitation. Starla has been excellent in guiding us, as she says, to the rights-based approach that we wish to take. So I think, yes, she'd like to add.
Yes, certainly adding to what Minister just said. Indeed, the more serious offenses, the murders, attempted murders, those are the ones that we hear about more often in the media, and those are the ones that have a greater impact on society. But when you look at the data, those are the smallest numbers. The perception is that, yes, minors are the ones committing the crimes, and, you know, that's what's being portrayed in the media, but the reality is those high-risk offenders are the minority. Majority of the kids who come in conflict with the law are for lesser offenses and more minor offenses. So the criminal justice system itself doesn't say that children should get a slap on the wrist. It should hold the child accountable. If you've committed an offense, there's a consequence for every behavior. And it's a system that tries to hold them accountable, yes, but it provides every opportunity to try to rehabilitate, right? Of course, high risk, those kids who are high risk, those who are gang involved, who may have started early in that life, they are, of course, harder. They're much more difficult to work with. And they usually end up at the Wagner's Youth Facility, because the youth hostel is an open facility. It's not for high-risk offenders, right? So this approach, you're looking at a continuum. The children who end up in Wagner's, like the major percentage of them come from difficult circumstances, come from disruptive families, have many challenges. And so what this approach does is that we're trying to intervene much earlier and prevent that from happening, preventing them from ending up in the prison. What we're seeing is that the current system, parents can simply go to the court and indicate to the magistrate that they cannot control their child. And if the magistrate believes that parent and they make a good enough case on what the parent has said, the magistrate, and we have seen it many times, magistrates would commit these children to the youth hostel till the age of 18.
Yeah.
And that is being done without the benefit of any intervention. I have to say that over the years, with a lot of advocacy, it's now only a few magistrates who would do something like this, send a child directly. The practice is that they would refer them to the community rehabilitation department. So what we're doing now, by changing this legislation, we're taking it out completely, so the parent cannot go to the court and seek to put their child within the institution. Instead, that will be removed completely. So they will then be referred to the department, where we will do our best to institute a range of interventions to try to impact the child and the parent, the family.
And I think that's really the core of the issue here that we need to understand. We don't always know the stories behind the children that are in institutions like the youth hostel, which will be renamed and no longer be a certified institution, but now a
residential care facility. And perhaps Paul and Marlene, if you'd allow me to add, we visited in early January. And what I found appalled me. So basically, I vowed, and along with the support of everyone, I said, look, we've got to make this change. So not only did we really look at the physical infrastructure, fixing up the bathrooms for the girls, which was in terrible condition, and also for the boys. I mean, they were backing bucket to flush toilet and things like that. So all the plumbing has been fixed. New furnitures, the bathrooms fixed up. They do have a nice big TV now in the girls and boys section. And guess what? They mind the TV, because they want to watch their programs. So they won't break that up, But we did say, look, we're going to make these changes not only to the physical infrastructure, but also to the systemic difficulties that were being suffered. Now, it does still remind people of a bit of a prison-like facility, because we do have to have security.
Well,
and so the dorms do have to have the locks and things like that. But We really have taken a different approach. We have a program officer now. Not that nothing had happened before, but we have beefed it up. And looking at the systemic changes, this is where we went back to get the advice from all our people at NCFC and Starla's department in particular. And we said, look, rights-based approach, interventions that will help children to reintegrate and get back. And then also, the approach that we're trying to take right now is to work with parents. Yeah. So we really don't want the parents to be saying, this is a place that I can, if I'm having the least bit of trouble, this is where the child must go. Yeah. Hostel should be, as much as we're trying to change it and look nice with pretty furniture and everything that I would love to have in my own home, hostel should be a last resort, yes, and for the shortest period of time. Yes. By the way, and the numbers change, because we have sometimes unaccompanied migrant minors, yes, and that kind of thing. So the numbers do change. And we do have to have a good amount of staff, because you have to have relief officers and that kind of thing. But we're happy to say that some of the programs are really working. We have a tailor there now. We have all kinds of other interventions for which I think we can feel positive about it.
I think that, and I really would love to hear a bit more. The last time you were here, Minister, I did ask about this very same issue about uncontrollable behavior, and Starla would know that I am aware that this has been a lobby for a long time. Many years. Mm-hmm. And if we break it down, it is essentially punishing children for a breakdown in parenting, mm-hmm, lack of parenting due, mm-hmm, to circumstances and many other things. A 15-year-old is deemed, or 14-year-old, mm-hmm, deemed uncontrollable and put in the hostel sometimes till they age out. They turn 18 and they're on their own. Right. Never visited by parents. They've done nothing wrong, mm-hmm, in terms of breaking laws. So we have seen this become a way for people essentially to rid themselves of the responsibility of parenting. But my question has to be, so being able to get to the point where we can repeal this portion of the legislation, as Starla said, you worked with magistrates to help them not do it, but now they won't even have the option, mm-hmm, to put them in hostel. How difficult was it to be able to get us to this point, since there's been lobbying for it for so many years?
I think I'll ask Starla to come in on that.
Indeed, it has been a long road. Yeah. I think decades, because it started even before I came on board, and I've been with the department for 11 years. So I think in some instances there was apprehension, was the timing right? And the time is now, because Minister Balderramos has really become a champion for this. She has taken it and put it at the forefront. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, that's what we needed. To someone to take it and champion it and push it to the next level. Yeah. And so she would call the AG's ministry and call anybody she needed to call to tell them, hey, this needs to be a priority. Now we've worked on this. We've done a lot of significant work. In some instances, we really had to go back to the drawing board. We had to go back to the drawing board twice in terms of doing drafting instructions. So it's really been a huge learning experience. But in terms of the key stakeholders, in terms of the magistrates and other persons, other members of like the Child Justice Committee who are advocates, they have been advocates from day one. Yeah. So the support in that arena has always been there. We don't see it being difficult making the transition. We are in the process right now of we have draft protocols in place, mm-hmm, that for the magistracy, for the Community Rehabilitation Department, and for Department of Human Services, and the police, the main agencies that would interface and this change would impact the most. And so we have these draft protocols that we're working to finalize, but already the magistrates court, especially the family court in Belize City, they have been sending persons to us, even though it is an option. So in that regard, we're formalizing a practice that we've worked very hard to advocate for.
Yeah.
And so the challenge will be working with the families.
Yes.
One of the challenges, of course, like what you mentioned, Marlene, we would say that parents tend to abdicate their parental responsibilities. And when the child has done the work and done an awesome job of making strides in a different direction, and we're trying to reintegrate them, the parent doesn't want, the parent is unforgiving, the parent doesn't want to deal with them. And currently there's nothing in the law that we can use to hold them accountable. So the changes, besides the repeal of the Certified Institutions Act, the Families and Children's Act will be adjusted. There will be minor amendments there so that community rehabilitation officers will be able to petition the court, much like on the other side of the child protection system where we have supervision and care orders for children who have been abused and neglected.
Yeah.
Our officers will be able to seek supervision orders or care orders for the children as a last resort. But what this does, we can then seek conditions to be attached to these types of orders.
Yeah.
And so we can ask the magistrate to have the parent engage in counseling or parenting support sessions or whatever interventions that after we have assessed the situation, we deem necessary to create that change that we want to see, not just in the child, but in the environment as well. So it is a shift. Some elements we have been doing already. We will just now everyone will just now be forced to implement all the way.
Now let me ask, I want to tap into that one a bit more, because where we talk about working with families, instead of just institutionalizing children, that's a huge component. But family reparation, repairing a family, comes at a cost, and it is very time consuming. So I want to ask you, Minister, about the support that is attached to the shift in legislation. I empathize with you having the monumental task of human development and working with families in addition to your other portfolios, because very often people look at society and say, well, you know, what are we going to do? But usually you have a strained budget.
Of course.
I've talked many times on this show of how our social workers are overworked. They have so many cases, more cases than they can handle. So when you add the element of a child that a parent would have said is uncontrollable, not paying not following rules, breaking rules, going to hostel, and now you say you're going to work with them. Sometimes it means financial resources. It means in helping the parent learn to cope, which is a process, and even offering things like housing and other stuff.
Precisely. I am so glad the conversation has kind of segued to this very important topic, Paul and Marlene and Starla, because as Starla was talking, the thing I was thinking about was the crime situation, which you brought up before. And basically, in cabinet and government now, we are looking at what we can do to provide better wraparound services to address the crime situation. We've almost lost a generation because it's been so long and we haven't really addressed the crime situation, especially on the south side of Belize City. What we were doing is really looking at how we can begin the process of maybe raising another generation to stay out of crime. And our senior managers, of which Starla is one, actually looked at the real input that is needed from the Ministry of Human Development and raising the profile of the Ministry of Human Development in everything that needs to happen in reducing crime, not just looking at education or the police or youth or whatever, but actually bringing human development to the center of the responses that we absolutely must make. And actually our staff, in terms of a project that we would like to do on the south side of Belize City actually came up with a budget for human development interventions of close to $2 million. Just for an initial, and we are in serious discussion at this time to try to put this project onto the ground and roll it out properly. Yes. Now, what we're talking about is a huge amount of assessment of families who are in need and a huge amount of counseling staff. So basically, of course, I'll have to go and lobby, but basically what we are saying is we need to have our counselors. We need to have our social workers who are actually going to get really on the ground and make this kind of intervention. Because it is not acceptable, as has been stressed so far. It's not acceptable to put children away when there's a little bit of trouble, nor is it acceptable to have children running out on the street, not in school. This is the purpose of programs like Boost and Boost Plus. But the Boost Plus is more of the wraparound service, in addition to the conditional cash transfer that says, keep your children in school, make sure they're immunized. And I know Starla has vast experience in this regard, so she might want to talk a little bit more about that. But I am so glad that we brought the conversation around almost full circle in terms of what we really need to do to improve the situation.
Fixing the issues, it's not fast, one, and it's not cheap either.
Not at all.
But I think all agree it's absolutely necessary. And Minister, you know, you've been in politics long enough, and investing in people, while it's great in the speeches that we give, when election time comes, you can't talk about that family that you saved. It has very little impact compared to counting number of streets.
Precisely.
And so we have seen this happen for so many years, and now we have the effects of it within our society.
Now is
so
the
you
time
feel
to address
confident that you'll be able to get the backing from this administration to help to change these, or to work on the social issues that we're facing?
Well, I'm not going to bring the conversation to politics, because what's done is done and the past is in the past. And as I was saying to Starla when we were chatting, I said, Starla, fret not thyself because of evildoers. Let us focus now on what we can do going forward. And I am confident, with the help of Starla, Sean Vargas, who is now at the head of the Human Services Department, also Miss Anna Williams, our social planner, Miss Juvenile, and of course, our National Commission for Families and Children, the National Women's Commission. We have really, and if I must say so myself, to blow our horn, we have some excellent staff. We have some very dedicated people.
All veterans to social work. Every single name I know.
We have some really, really good people. And now is the time for us not to look so much at the past, but what we can do now. Not only to raise the profile of human development and bring it to the center of all of our developmental activities, but to really roll out the Southside Project, perhaps declare it, as the Prime Minister has said, perhaps declare it as a special zone for development in looking at crafts and arts, putting children in good activities that they can really make a difference with, helping the moms, helping the dads. You know, UNICEF said the other day that only 24% of children grow up with a male figure, a father figure in the family. There is just so much that we can look at, but there is even more to do, you know. Maybe Starla could add here.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, certainly. I think that when we look at the vision, tying it back to juvenile justice now, when we look at the vision for any good juvenile justice system, we actually want to flip the system completely. Right now, a lot of focus is on secondary and tertiary prevention, meaning that children who have already interfaced with the law or those who are in institutions and we're trying to rehabilitate. And we'll do our best to continue working with those children there. But the focus needs to be on primary prevention, where we are working with families, where we are doing early childhood stimulation, where we are mitigating those risks, where we are trying to minimize the traumas that children experience, you know, and that impact them as they get older. So we want to flip the script. We want to have a juvenile justice system where we can actually close down the youth hostel. I mean, I would love for that to happen because it won't be needed. Where we will have programs and services that keep children and adolescents positively engaged, you know, that they don't enter the juvenile justice system formally. So these types of services that look at the family and try to strengthen the family's ability to take care of its children are key. And so I'm glad that actually I like the fact that the name families is in the name of the ministry now, because it's at the core of what we do. And even when we work with an adolescent who has come in conflict with the law, we can't work with them in isolation. We have to work with the family. So that is at the core, and all of the wraparound services. And what Minister mentioned, I agree. We have an awesome team at the Ministry of Human Development, and we will do the best that we can. But the other entities, the other ministries, they have to come on board, because our interventions only go so far. We can be helping with the psychosocial, but what about housing? You know, we can help with certain levels of skills training or keeping kids in school, but what about the job opportunities? So all other entities, all other ministries have a role to play in really addressing the core issues that really lend to crime and violence later on.
Would you, Ms. Bradley, would you speak to the referral process in terms of how you identify these youths that are in need of, and these families are in need of these types of services, considering the amendments, of course?
Well, the first point, I believe families will still be going to, or parents might still be going to the courts, because that is what is known. You go to the court when you want to send your child to the hostel. So the court is already aware that they are to refer to the Community Rehabilitation Department, our main office in Belize City, or any of the Ministry of Human Development offices across the country, because we have community rehabilitation officers in each district, as well as San Pedro and Independence. So through the courts, the police can also make referrals, and we've also had walk-ins. Parents who just come. We've had we just started a Facebook page. It needs some work, but we're working on it. But we've had people already reach out to us through Facebook messages, and we've engaged them. So we've had persons just voluntarily come in and say, you know, I need help with my child, and you know, so there are several ways, and we'll try to do more in terms of getting our contact information and out there so that parents can access services within the department.
When I heard you speak earlier about some of the offenses that are very aged, I was getting the understanding that these types of offenses will no longer be reflected in the law, but that in fact when these things arise, that some sort of intervention will be put in place. My question, however, is in the case that, and you can offer clarification on that, but in the case that a child actually ends up at the facility, when you speak about a rights-based approach, what are we saying in terms of the level of treatment and the level of engagement that a child will receive at the facility compared to some of the more horrendous stories we've heard of treatment that children actually receive at these facilities? And maybe, Minister, you could pitch into that.
Of course, yeah. Yes. Let Starla start, and I'll continue. Mm-hmm.
So, like we said, in any system, institutionalization should be the last resort. So it should mean that we have exhausted all other options before a child is placed within the institution. And as Minister rightly said, the period of time that they stay should be the shortest period possible. So from the time a child enters the facility, there is a plan, all right? And the plan involves the child, the family, and there are certain goals that are put in place so that we can reintegrate the child back into society. Rights-based means that the child is at the center. It means that the child has a voice. It means that the child's perspective, concerns are heard, are listened to, and are taken into account. It doesn't mean that decisions are being made for him or her without their input. A lot of times, you know, it was age-old, children should be seen and not heard, but we have to include children in their plans because it's theirs, it's their life and they have to own it. So those are things that we've already been doing. One of the key things that has helped us over the years, I don't want to say it too quickly, but it's been over 2 years since we've had any kind of major incident within the facility. And I have to say that this is because we have an excellent staff who work with these children. And while we struggle in many other areas, sometimes with resources to deal with some of the infrastructural components, the relationships that these staff build with these children is what is most important. Yeah. And we have seen that really help these children move and make progress. So we have a zero tolerance when it comes to abuse. We have a complaints system. We have a social worker who checks in every day with these kids on site. And she checks in with them. So the staff have really done an excellent job of building relationships with these kids, and that's where it starts. Yeah. Their dignity and their worth, and listening to them and caring for them. I always tell people, when these children reach the facility, or even before that, any child that we're working with, these are our children. We take ownership of these children. Yeah. And just like our own children, when they do behaviors that, you know, we wouldn't want them to do, you know, you don't throw them out. Yeah. You work with them. You know, it's a learning process. You have to help them to develop the skills, yeah, and knowledge to be able to navigate as adults in this society. So it's always a work in progress.
I'm so glad you said that. Just how times have changed, that we look at children and their behavior, and we don't look at the behavior, we try to understand why, because now we know there's usually something that's taken place. Correct. Minister, yes. Let me put this into perspective for a bit, because one of the key elements here is one of the things that Starla mentioned, which is working along with other ministries. You have a child who is identified with trouble behavior. You go back, so that's kind of the end result, but really it goes all the way back to the start with the family. Other things that may have been missed during that time: employment opportunities for the parents, access to education or affordability of education, proper housing, whether or not they live in good sheltering, the access to resources in their community, light, water, proper infrastructure, and the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what is the level of connectivity between ministries? I'll give the example. I know the housing ministries rolling out their low-income houses. Mm-hmm. How much is the Ministry of Human Development tied to that, if you know that families are in particularly dire situation needing this? We know in 2019 it was confirmed, and this was pre-COVID, over half this country is living in poverty.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is what we are addressing assiduously, if I could put it that way, Paul and Marlene and Starla. I think that there is great room for improvement, mm-hmm. but I can tell you that right now we are focusing for the initial phase of the rollout for the housing on single moms, people in very dire circumstances. And I can tell you there is vigorous discussion as to how we can improve our working together. Yeah. Let me go back to the hostel for just a moment. Mm-hmm. I think there's been, as Starla has said, a lot of improvement. way back in the days, it was more, okay, children must be seen and not heard. Now we are really seeing the staff working with the kids, and there's sporting activities, there's arts and crafts. They did some beautiful picture frames, actually made out of bottle stopper, all around on a little kind of little background, and they fold the stoppers and make it look nice and look like a tree or a flower or something like that. I'm really proud of what has been happening. Now, going back to the integration and the cooperation and collaboration. Again, what we need is for the ministries to work together, and we're working very, very closely on it. Let me mention the Ministry of Education. We're looking with the Ministry of Education on children with special needs. We have a disabilities desk now in the ministry, so that we can look at people who need that special help of any person living with disability. And that kind of integrated approach in working with the various ministries. Also, I can't not mention the youth ministry and Minister Kevin Bernard really hitting the ground running in terms of getting everybody involved in helping our young people to come forward. So I think the short answer to the question is it is a work in progress, as has been said, but we really mean to do as best we can to make it happen.
Now, as we said earlier, this is the amendment, the legislative changes will be introduced tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes.
And then there is the revamp of the hostel itself, which will become a residential care facility. So those are
We're treating it as such, even though we haven't introduced the bill yet, but it'll be tomorrow.
Okay, so this is definitely, I think it was important for us to understand the whys.
Absolutely.
Now, if you just allow me, as we quickly run out of time, to tap into some other areas of your portfolios. The Indigenous Peoples Affairs is definitely something that is still a burning issue here, and we saw last week where the alcalde of Big Falls came out speaking about representation for him and his own views, or his village's views on how things should proceed. Tell me where we are today from the government standpoint.
Well, we're listening to people, and we're taking an approach of inclusivity. We're listening, we're visiting. We were down in Otosha, we were down in Dolores, we have been to San Antonio, San Pedro, Colombia. We've been really all over. And I think the approach that we have to continue to take is that everybody must be heard. And alcaldes, ex-alcaldes, very, very important role, but these leaders should not speak without consulting with their individual communities. That is pretty much where we are. We're rolling out the approach of the implementation. Cabinet has submitted a draft of the free, prior, informed consent protocol to the Caribbean Court of Justice. We are taking some of the complaints coming from the villages seriously in terms of land matters. And clearly, we will have to find a way to balance the competing interests of those who wish for the customary land rights as opposed to those who may want their lease and their individual titles. But I think the main thing in terms of where we are as a ministry, reaching out, listening to people, knowing that we have to look at the concerns of the Garifuna people, for example. Garifuna Settlement Day coming up in November. We are not here, Cabinet and the government are not here to impose our views on anyone. We will listen as best we can, balance the competing interests, and make sure that everybody is heard in terms of the positions that need to be taken.
When it comes to the free and prior informed consent protocol. Was there consensus?
There were a few little glitches in terms of people's views here and there, but I think maybe where we may have lacked the full consensus, but government is determined, is the issue of representation. Because There is a grouping, the Maya Leaders Alliance, the Toledo Alcaldes Association, and the Julian Cho Society. But there are also other Maya groupings and representative organizations for the Maya people in the South that we believe need to be heard. And I think that Commissioner Greg Chuck has done a really good job of saying and of holding the line that the issue of representation is one that we must respect, but also repeating that the individual villages, in terms of the consensus of the village, need to be heard.
How will that be resolved, the matter of the division among the Maya people where villages are concerned? Because I know that it will also affect the demarcating of lands.
Right. Well, for example, there is an issue right now between Otosha and Corazon, where the people of one village don't really want a demarcation to take place, but the people of the other village would like it.
Yeah.
The way that would be resolved, Paul, I believe, would be that there has to be dialogue. There has to be dialogue, bringing people to the table. The boundaries between, say, Barranco and Midway, those are issues that we have to look at. And the only way that I believe we should approach it is for government not to get in there heavy-handed and say, this is what you're going to do, but to listen to the villagers themselves and to play a facilitating role. For example, I can tell you, the people who know about social sciences, anthropology, people will tell you that in Barranco right now, 20% of the village is Maya. So basically what we're saying is, let us not look at the divisions and what divides us in the South, but how we can find common ground to help with the development. And by the way, some people say, and there are two Southern representatives who we have to respect, Honorable Mike Espat and Minister Oscar Requena. Some people will say the FPIC protocol, all the processes that we have to go through may slow development in a district that probably needs it the most. Our approach will have to be, we have to balance, because we cannot afford to slow down development, but at the same time, the requirements, because of the customary land rights having been recognized, the requirements for consultation and for dialogue and for respect will always remain.
And I know that as we run out of time, I know that one of the major concerns for some of these landowners is that their lands are landlocked, in that, and it's an urgent matter for some, in that they want to access finances to develop their lands, their farms, for education as well. However, my question here has to do with the Garifuna people and where the conversation is currently as they look to the Maya land rights issue as a way forward for their own issues and for their own advocation.
I think it's an issue again of representation, but also I think that government's responsibility is again respectful engagement, listening to people's concerns, but of course we would not as a government be able to make decisions for how things go forward. For example, in the village of St. Bite, where they want to put a gas station, you have a vocal minority who are agitating against. But when you look at really what's happening on the ground, a majority of the residents of the village would like for the development to go forward. So I think it is a matter of not rushing into anything, and government, we ourselves see that the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs is something that we have to develop in terms of the roles of the portfolio, and clearly we will have to come up with some government policies. You know, that again is something that we will need to look at, you know?
And if I could just get one comment as we wrap up, because we are heading into November where we're going to be talking about gender-based violence, and we know that domestic abuse is still a very challenging issue in this country.
Huge topic.
Also in your responsibility.
Huge topic, and I really would like Starla to come in on this.
Jump in and tell us,
maybe you can go first, Starla, and I'll wrap up. Yeah, for the gender-based violence issues and other issues, right? Okay.
Well, certainly the ministry continues to work very closely along with the National Women's Commission. I know that there's the gender-based violence plan of action, and there's been a lot of work in terms of trying to change the culture, because certain issues certain social issues, the root of it is the social norms, and those are often the most difficult to change. And so that's the foundation. I think moving forward, a lot of focus will be on integrated services and working to change some of the cultural norms and practices, and getting people to understand the impacts that these types of issues like gender-based violence has on the society, not just on the victim or the survivor, but on the entire family and society. So the Spotlight Initiative through the UN agencies, I know our CEO, Tanya Santos, she's a key part of that initiative, and it is doing wonderful work in terms of trying to break down some of the social, norms, that really, and working with masculinity and really bringing men into being partners in this, So there's a lot on the table, Marlene and Paul.
Yeah. Right. And then if I could add, thank you, Starla. Then if I could add, we're working very hard along with the Special Envoy for the development of families and children. Rosanna Briceño has been a champion so far, and we rely on her a lot. As a matter of fact, just last week, we were in a Zoom forum on the domestic violence issue, and it is something that we will continue to give a lot of attention to. Thea Garcia Ramirez and Cynthia Williams, at the Women's Commission, are absolutely committed. There are committees in San Pedro and Kikocker. We're trying to roll it out throughout the country as well. But you can be assured that we are working hard on the 16 days of activism, and we will continue to give the issue of interpersonal violence, it's called sometimes, intimate partner violence, and domestic violence, gender-based violence. We will give special attention going forward to making sure that this is front and center of our agenda, because it is so very, very important. So I'm glad you asked that before the show came to an end, Yes.
There's lots more
There's a lot more.
We could ask you about how you feel about trade licensing in
oh
Lakeville.
That's for the next show. That's for the next show, yes.
But we do thank you for coming on set this morning, Starla, as well, for helping us understand the removal of the uncontrollable behavior.
And the certified institution,
yes. These are major steps in terms of looking at how our children go through systems and end up in systems. So we wanted more clarity. Thank you for coming in. Stay safe.
Yes.
All right. And
thank you, Starla. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Marlene. And I will continue to try to stay strong among you young people.
All right. And with that, we are going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the influence of the media portrayal on Belizean identity formation. That's coming up in a few. Stay tuned.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Full-Tech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
The vaccine is now available. We here at R&G Life encourage you to take the vaccine. Belize, it's time to roll up our sleeves.
I'm rolling up mine because I know what COVID can do to families.
Because I want to go back to the way things were.
I'm rolling up mine so that I'm able to do music again.
Because I want to protect my family.
Things are slowly getting back to normal. The new normal, which includes getting vaccinated. Trust the facts. When your turn comes, take the opportunity to get vaccinated. Roll up or Believe.
Hey son, how was your first day at sixth form?
Really cool. It was great to see my friends, and I really love my teachers.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your first day, but I'll be back from Corozal next week.
It's okay, Dad. I can't wait to see you. Oh, and please remember, I still have some books I need to purchase.
Ah, yes. Let me e-cash you that right now. Money has been sent. I add a little extra cash just for you.
Whoa, Dad. Thanks. Got it.
You're welcome, sir.
Download the eCash app today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257. eCash, the future is here.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
We have been a partner with Smart for over 10 plus years. We have a full Smart plan we use as our major driver for our business. We have a service that rolls over in that if you call one and it is busy, it rolls over to the next line. So once you call us, you can get us at any time. Before we got this Smart service, we were paying upwards of nearly $2,000 in phone bills. Since we've had our Smart service, we pay an average of about $600. So we've had tremendous saving, more than 50%. For the businesses, if you want to save money, switch to Smart because it is far more cost effective and the service is excellent.
Smart continues to be innovative in bringing new technology and meaningful savings during these challenging times to businesses across Belize. Sign up for our VoIP technology or broadband packages and save more.
And we're back, and we are moving into our second conversation for this morning. As we told you, this pair recently presented at the Heritage Network's symposium, and they spoke about the influence of media portrayal on Belizean identity formation. What exactly that means, They'll tell us all about it. We have with us Andre Habet, founder and scriptwriter of Breadfruit Productions, and Gabrielle Holtz, Assistant Communications Officer of Red Plus. Good morning. You enjoyed that joke, huh, Andre?
Oh, yeah. No, I always like it when people don't understand what I said, because it usually means that I did a bad job of writing.
Well, I mean, we can start off with just the general classification that people use media for. And it's always something that we discuss internally. So when you say media, very often people think news. But you are going way beyond that for the actual definition. So let me just find out how you both got involved in taking a look at this issue.
Gabrielle, you want to? Okay, well.
You kind of birthed the idea, so yeah.
This was just hanging out and thinking that you should dive into it deeper?
Well, you know, because I do film production work, I really just have had an obsession about how Belizeans are seen in media portrayals. The presentation that we did, it's all one long video analyzing various contemporary U.S. texts that are looking at Belize in one way or another. You know, we looked at 90 Day Fiancé, that season that had Ryan from Ladyville in it. We looked at Mad Dogs, which was a show that was, the whole premise of it was that it was based in Belize, so we looked at that one that was released on Amazon a couple of years ago. And the UK version of that show was a big hit, and then this US version was not. And it was really interesting to go and see how Belize in that looked, especially because they didn't shoot much of it in Belize at all. And then there was the third show we looked at, which was an episode of NCIS Beyond Borders. And that show being, that whole series being about looking at different countries through the lens of the United States FBI agents, you know. So for us, it was all about, I brought this to Gabrielle today. It's like, let's just show people how limited the idea of who Belizeans are is if we look at solely these contemporary media portrayals. And I think it was a really enriching and frustrating and hilarious experience where Gabrielle and I were lucky enough to be able to look at these videos and get some clips together that then we were able to use for the presentation. And I felt really like we made a successful team in the sense that we both understood what was going on in the works that we were looking at, and we came up with some definitive things to say about them.
How long does an exercise like this actually take you all to go through so much different films and productions?
I don't think we calculated how much time. I think we'd be annoyed if we did. But it came down to like just watching. We basically first had to come up with what it is that we were going to look at. And then after that, we just basically watched all of it. So, you know, the same way how anybody would like binge watch something, we were doing that, but we were taking a lot of notes while we were doing it. And then going back and watching something again and again to see like, is this what we think it is? And then, you know, picking out clips for it. The clip that's being shown right now is from NCIS Beyond Borders.
With the worst Creole accent or portrayal I have ever seen on TV.
You've seen it?
Oh, yes.
I've never seen it
I'm one of
before.
those people, if I know Belize is mentioned, I want to see it. Like, or used at all. And every time it's the same. But this was perhaps the worst. She's a translator for the Creole.
Oh, really?
And it's not even Creole.
Yes. And that was one that Gabrielle and I had to look at a lot and just be like, what is, like, it's like they almost make a new version of Creole that is so unintelligible to rationalize her existence on the show. Where it's like, it makes me pretty sad. I know some friends who are anthropologists, and I'm sure they would be saddened to see their representation as well in media.
Tell us about your perspective, Gabrielle.
No, I was just about to say, like, about the question about watching all the things. It's like we just binge watch shows and called it research. That's basically what we did. No, but it was yeah, it was I thought it was just going to be, oh, just taking pointers and taking notes. But the emotions that you go through watching these things, I expect, especially not me knowing exactly what I'm walking into with the shows that was going on. Yeah, it's emotional because it's like, you have to you kind of dissociate yourself when you're watching it on TV. But then when you're actually looking for things and analyzing things, you realize the framework. You kind of realize the picture that they're painting of Belize, and it kind of makes it an emotional experience. Well, why did they do that, or why did they do this? And that's basically why we wanted to do this, to kind of, because like you said, you get so excited just hearing Belize and hearing Belize mentioned or hearing Belize name dropped in a show, that we kind of let this excitement overcome us. And then we don't really analyze well, what are they saying about us, or what are they really trying to show people and show not only us as Belizeans, but show the world basically. So that's really why I think we dug deeper into this topic.
How do you think, one of the interesting things is seeing how we're stereotyped, and you use these specific examples, but if we go back and just try to remember other references to Belize, when somebody says, oh, they're hiding in Belize, or they ran away with the money to Belize, or stashed the money in Belize. But with these particular instances, some of these stereotypes are reinforced. Do you want to explain that a bit deeper?
Yeah. So what we felt were, we did a breakdown of some of the stereotypes we were seeing, and one of the ones that I think is less dramatic, but maybe the most damaging, is that Belizeans in U.S. media, we're never the protagonists of the works that we're seeing. With the exception of 90 Day Fiancé, which is a reality show, we hardly ever get to understand the perspective, the point of view of a Belizean character without it being something that they're simply doing to aid someone. There's the narrative trope referred to as the magical Negro, right? And we see that happening a lot in media where Creole people are represented in Belize, in the United States, which is just that there's, especially women, right? These women in Mad Dogs, you would see them come into the show, and the men in the show, Mad Dogs, they're horrible men. They're very selfish, cowardly men. And throughout the show, again and again, they meet these super empathetic women who cater to their needs and try to help them in different ways. And it just diminishes. What that does to me is it sort of says that we are these sort of secondary characters to the grander narratives of Americans, to the grander narratives of UK people. And to me, that's why I became very interested in looking at this, because I was hoping that we would find someone with some degree of agency and some degree of nuance to their portrayal, but that was entirely absent. And in some ways that sort of solidified for me and reaffirmed why it is important for Belizeans. Right now, this year, in a couple of weeks, we have the Belizean International Film Festival making its return after 2 years, and that's why I think it's important for us to recognize the significance of those events. It's not simply because we want to support artists, but it's because we have to see the ways in which artists inform our understanding of reality. And when we are, only seeing a version of Belize that is like this, then it puts us in a cage where we can't really envision ourselves as being movers in our country that are moving with the interest of Belizeans first and foremost. So that's my main concern with these stereotypes and what they do. The video that started it off, the presentation we did, is from Spy Kids, which was the first reference to Belize I remember seeing as a kid, where I remember people watching that movie, and it's just one line where it's sort of like what you already said, where the main girl in the movie, Carmen, she says that she runs away to Belize. And this is like a 13-year-old girl, and so already right from a young age, my sense of what Belize was to other people was that Belize was this place you run away to.
You hide out, can't be found.
Exactly.
Yeah, and those are reinforced. I mean, we think of it as a vacation spot, and I think some of the imagery we've seen when Belize is portrayed as, you know, this beautiful, which we are, this beautiful country, and others are like you go there and you'll never be found. So I think it's interesting to hear that you've taken the time to look at how we're portrayed. But from a young people perspective, what do you think this means? Because you're talking about Belizean identity formation. So this is how we see others seeing us. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So there's this reference often to like the tourist days, right? And the tourist days being the way in which tourism as an industry and the way that the tourists experience how we interact with them in order for them to give their capital to us, you know, we put on a face, we put on a performance. And similarly, we talk about that in reference to media and the media gaze and how, you know, the reflection back towards us distorts our own understanding of who we are and what we need to be striving to be, you know. We, you know, humans were sort of fundamentally drawn to entropy and laziness to some degree, and it's easier to form an identity when something is already available. And that's what the media often ends up doing. The media lends us a slot that then we can shape ourselves from. And when it's as limited as what we've seen, it, you know, when it's coupled with the fact that our education system is so lacking in its cultural components, then our own understanding of culture largely ends up coming from people who are not invested in our well-being.
Yeah, and just to build off of what Andre was saying about, you know, how important it is for Belizeans to create their own storytelling and create their own films and their own narratives, I also think it's important in creating those things not to fall victim to the tropes and stereotypes that we've been kind of familiar with seeing ourselves in foreign media. And so I think it's important to not only be critical of the media that we're watching and consuming, but also be critical of the media that we're going to create or that is being created as Belizeans, so that we don't also kind of you know, be proponents of those same stereotypes that, you know, maybe we don't realize are stereotypes or we don't realize are tropes or negative tropes, but they are, and that's why it's important, I think, to be critical about it as we're creating it and encouraging other people to create it as well.
So I'm interested, you know, when you compare how a writer or a production team decides on a portrayal of Belize, that's one thing. But when it's reality TV, it's something else. And I think as everyone tuned in to 90 Day Fiancé, there were many varying opinions about the portrayal. How do you, there's a major difference here.
Yeah, there was a difference, but I think what we tried to do in all of the media is pick up on similar themes about it. And I remember, you know, we kind of did like, we're just like, oh, but it's a reality show. And it's like, it's very easy to pick apart a script. And it's very easy to pick apart scenes that are kind of curated to deliver some type of narrative or agenda. But it's just funny in which the reality show kind of also did the same thing. The situations they put Ryan in, or the context they put Ryan in, and the questions they would ask him, and like kind of probe him to get some kind of response from him that kind of matches the agenda that they already had from the beginning. I mean, the whole show, I think, is based off of basically people from developing countries or underdeveloped countries kind of profiting, or kind of, oh, well, they're trying to, you know, get with the white person for money or a better life, or to run away from their country. And so, you know, in that same respect, Ryan was also, you know, victim to that narrative. And so I think it's the same thing, like what we noticed in Mad Dogs and in Beyond Borders. There is a lacking. There's always a lacking in the Belizean context, whether it be resources or whether it be anything. We're always framed as the one lacking. And so even a reality TV show, they find their way to, you know, kind of
develop characters.
They characterize Ryan basically, and even if we don't realize it, that's, you know, it's what they're doing.
And it's not only that, but then within the context of the show, right? I mean, there's a point where Ryan leaves, and then his cousin Harry steps in, and it goes to show this same thing of like we're so easily swappable in the narrative of the United States. Exactly, we're interchangeable. it doesn't matter, Ryan Harris. At the end of the day, you know, Stephanie was getting what she wanted from a Belizean man, and that was it. And we have to, you know, we're all watching this as Belizeans, but then, you know, as part of the viewing experience, right? Gabriel and I, you know, we're not just sitting there, you know, eating popcorn, but also thinking, okay, so how would this potentially look like to an American? And then, like, the ways in which Stephanie would act sometimes, she would be perpetuating stereotypes with whether or not there was like evidence for it. So there's this one long scene that we included in our presentation where Stephanie suspects Ryan of having stolen some like some familial jewelry, yes, and she's like losing it. She's having a breakdown over it, and then she finds it, and she's like, oh, thank God he didn't take this. And but at no point in the show is it ever previously established that Ryan has like hot hands or anything like that. And so again, like the show is, while it's reality TV does decide on the cuts it's gonna make, right? And from a U.S. perspective, this like scene was playing to the narrative of like, like, you know, Belizeans or like Gabriel was saying, people from developing countries, we're only looking to prey on the susceptibility of innocent, like, older white women, you know, in this case. And to me that was really disturbing because that was a decision that TLC as a network made.
In their final cut. Well, remember, they're providing entertainment. And so that's what they're going after. But it drives home a larger point, and I guess, you know, Andre, I guess this is perhaps where some of your passion comes from. It's so important that we as Belizeans are able to see ourselves reflected on what we choose to entertain ourselves with. That's part of why, you know, companies like here exist, why you create movies, and why so many other people who enter this industry venture into it, because when you're able to see someone who looks like you or talks like you, and you can see that reflected back on screen, it is a very important impact that's being made. And when somebody else is making the decisions for their own purposes, it's not necessarily a reflection that we're comfortable with.
I think, like you said, I think representation is incredibly important. But I also think it's really, really important, especially as Belizeans, anybody coming from countries like ours who, you know, unfortunately get portrayed in these types of ways, that we remember that the media, whether it be news media, whether it be film media, whether it be whatever type of media, it really just serves as one big propaganda machine. And there's an agenda behind it. And so while it's important to look for ourselves and while representation is important and these portrayals are, you know, it brings some kind of joy, it brings some kind of importance and relevance when we see them. It's also important to be critical and not look to them as you know, fact, as law, like, oh, this is who I am. They said this is a Belizean, so this is who I am. It's just important, like to look at it, but be critical about it, like I said earlier.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think if you put it into the perspective of any person who's not been exposed to Belize, looking at, let's say, 90 Day Fiancé and deciding definitively this is what Belizeans represent, or any of these movies, that's where the danger lies.
Yeah, and I highly suggest nobody watch Mad Dogs. You can just watch the trailer.
Well, first of all, they didn't shoot. They did scenery from Belize. They didn't actually shoot the whole thing in Belize. I think they were in Puerto Rico or.
Puerto Rico, and that's what I was going to get at here too, right? Which is that not only are there portrayals of Belize, but also because Belize does not live up to the understanding of a paradise in every single instance, right? There's a scene in the first episode of Mad Dogs where they go on a night out of town, right? And they go to all these like really beautiful places that are at once they're like historical architecture, but then they're like really hip clubs for super rich people. And Belize doesn't really have this sort of scene here. And why that's important is because, you know, the Belize as it actually isn't sufficient enough of like a luxurious space for this fictional representation of the country. And so they have to slide in all these various different locales to make Belize something that it isn't. The Beyond Borders episode also does this in their portrayal of San Pedro, where they're driving around San Pedro, they're going up all these hills. So they're creating like these imaginary geographies of what Belize is. And it's not that, you know, I'm seeking always like realism from work, but it is, I guess to me, what I'm curious about is like, why is the Belize as it is not enough for these fictional representations? And what is the implicit critique of what Belize is when they have to imagine so much more else to make us seem like an interesting place?
Yeah.
Coming out of this study, Andre, how does this impact now your approach to production and filmmaking?
Well, for me, I am very much invested now in portraying stories that are not typically considered to be a Belizean story that you would want to see, right? Like the movie that I finished producing recently, a short film called Samantha and Mavis and Jasmine and Ashley. That movie is about queer women in Belize. And that's not a story we see. And it's not really about a queer romantic relationship per se, but it's about two queer women who are talking to each other in a bathroom at a party. And I wanted to write something like that, and I wrote that with Julissa Torres, and Lester Lewis directed it. And I wrote that movie because I felt like, you know, I want these people who only ever get to see visions of themselves in the news in Belize because of violence against queer people. I wanted to create a story that was a comedy that was about two people who frustrate each other but love each other, and that we only ever get this sort of really demonized vision of when it comes to the ways in which particular religions might talk about them, or the ways in which particular you know, morality tells us that we should despise those people. So that's the stories that I'm invested in now. You know, I have other scripts in development, and they're all looking at, you know, just very specific people. They're not trying to like make these big statements about Belize. I think trying to make these generalized statements of Belize, if you go into something like that, you're only going to come out again with new cliches, right? That might be just as harmful. So it's in the specific stories that I see the future of Belizean narratives happening.
Looking forward to it. Are you entering into the film festival coming up?
Yeah, we're waiting to hear back if we get in, but yeah, we're waiting right now.
All right. Well, you know, it's been fascinating hearing your process in diving into how Belize is portrayed in international media, and it has been, I think, a great conversation point. When we hear Belize mentioned again, we'll probably think twice and say, well, why'd they choose to reference us in that way? And I think that alone is really a great takeaway from all of this.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, because I really do want that. We need more critical literacy of the media we consume and how we think about ourselves, because if we don't do that, then we're just going to take it up passively, and that's going to have the effect that we're talking about that's undesirable, which is just allowing these things to unconsciously shape us. And we should have the autonomy to shape ourselves, right?
Yeah, I think I call it take back our storytelling and our narrative.
I love that.
I think that's what we should do.
Well, thank you both for joining us this morning and telling us more about it. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap up. So stay tuned.
Yashik Conservation Trust works with communities to promote sustainable agricultural practices through agroforestry, beekeeping, ingali cropping, and fire management. These sustainable farming practices are providing wholesome food, ecological services, and other income-generating opportunities. Yashche is empowering communities by working together to protect our natural resources for the many generations to come.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials. all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
The TV you love is always with you, from live TV, sports, and on-demand titles. Choose your plan today. Plans start as low as $15 per month. My TV, entertainment, anytime, anywhere.
Es un hecho. Únicamente con Smart obtienes todo realmente ilimitado. Solo con Smart obtienes datos ilimitados en cualquier momento. Mientras que con el otro proveedor solo son datos dobles los fines de semana. Con datos ilimitados todos los días no hay necesidad de esperar, así que es un hecho que nuestros planes ilimitados superan a la competencia. Por lo tanto, no permita que le digan cómo y cuándo usar sus datos y obtenga llamadas, mensajes de texto y datos ilimitados. Vive la verdadera experiencia de planes ilimitados con Smart. Es un hecho. Haga el cambio y viva Smart.
We're back. Great conversations today.
Yeah, well, that first conversation with Minister Garcia was definitely an informative one. Just looking at the legislative changes that will be made to kind of take a more holistic approach to bringing interventions to these dealing with these issues that are prevalent in our communities.
Yeah. No, a very important conversation to have there and to give more clarity as to what this legislative, what these particular changes mean for individual families and for our wider society. You know, we hear of it and very often we don't know how things have been functioning behind the scene. And while there's been a lot of advocacy, it's important to get the legislation to catch up as well.
What jumped out to me was really seeing how much focus they're attempting to place on the families and ensuring that the parents get the type of intervention that is needed, because it's one thing to quote unquote rehabilitate the children. However, when they are placed back into society, back into the family situation, if the parents are not prepared to take on these new behavioral changes, then we could see the children going right back to where they first began. And it's kind of interesting because at the first, it's the parent, they are the ones that are making the complaints, you know, saying, hey, my child needs to be fixed. And so this approach that the ministry is taking seems to now be placing priority on the parents looking in the mirror as well while, you know, asking for help. So.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that stood out to me is understanding that it is going to be an integrated approach. You know, when we talk, they're all connected. When we talk about crime situation, when we talk about poverty, and even when we talk about breakdown of families, it still boils back down to having the right intervention and support where necessary. So I think that's a key component that was discussed this morning. We want to thank them for joining us and bringing some clarity. And then I also want to thank Andre and Gabrielle for joining us this morning. Very interesting conversation.
Very. You know, it reminded me, there's this show on Netflix, and by the way, I had no clue that I was doing research when I was binge watching, when I've been binge watching my entire weekends away. I was actually in research mode.
Okay, what were you researching?
But it reminds me of this Netflix show, the series that I watched called Outer Banks. Really good show. But at the end of season 2, this very familiar song began playing. And I was like, wait, that's a Belizean song. So I went to look it up and I realized that it was song from the Garifuna Collectives.
Nice.
It's
now I want to go watch that.
Yes. And
if I missed that episode.
I mean, the music was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was, and this series is shot in the Caribbean, so it's a very tropical setting. And so to have that, for me, I could have identified with that.
Yeah.
And so I could see how much it impacts us to be identified with a series, with some sort of international movie and show.
Well, I gotta say kudos to Andrea and Gabrielle for just doing what the work behind it. You know, sitting and whether it takes binge watching, but kind of just going beyond the surface of saying they reference Belize in a way I like or didn't like, but to look at where the common thread is, what we tend to be stereotypically classified as. And more importantly, bringing that to people's attention so that we can see how a narrative is built for us and that we don't necessarily have to agree with it and we don't have to buy into it either. So that is that conversation. Of course, I do want to say that you can see their presentation. I believe it is posted online. So you can find out more about the presentation that they did on the media portrayal of Belizean identity. We are out of time though. So we're going to wrap the show up for today. If you would like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook.
You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ.
And also on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
And your heart, and your mind.
And start your morning right. And then keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart wide open.
All right, we're going to see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Thank you.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.